brother against brother. You need not study the American Civil War for long before you will encounter this phrase. A phrase of the divisions of the nation and the division of families, truly, particularly in border states. But today is not Brother's Day. Today is Father's Day. So I have a story to share of a father and son who were both on the field of Gettysburg. Quick note, I did literally hours of research just to try and find the actual source for this story. Could not find it. So I'm going to have to ask all of you to take it with a hefty grain of salt, because although I have heard the story twice on the battlefield, I cannot find a written source for it. Maybe I'm just using the wrong search terms, but I cannot find actual confirmation of this happening. So it might have, it might not have. I don't have the names for the father and son because guess what? I can't find it. I can't find the source. But I committed to making this video, and I did enough other research about the general events that I'm going to share some, but I am kind of disappointed that this might not be true. But my intention on this channel is never to spread false history, so take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. As you know, families tend to agree with each other, right? Especially on politics. I'm sure there's never been a family's Thanksgiving ruined by a political argument. Oh wait, that happens all the time. So, in the beginning of the war, during Maryland's vote for secession, the capital of Maryland was temporarily moved from Annapolis, Maryland, which is central, to Frederick City, Maryland, which is in Frederick County, which borders Pennsylvania. This was done in an attempt, a successful attempt, to stop Maryland delegates from voting to secede, as they could have then Pennsylvania troops come in and arrest those who voted to secede, as the federal government really didn't want Maryland and Virginia to secede, because then they were immediately surrounded. So they strong-armed Maryland into staying in. Another event is when moving troops south, they traveled through Baltimore. And the people of Baltimore were not happy with the Union troops going through their land. And there was a minor riot. Father and son. One sees the strong-arm tactics forcing Maryland to stay in the Union, despite arguable dissent. They ended up voting to stay, but much of Maryland didn't want to. Maryland was a slave state. And so one sees the strong-arm tactics of not allowing Maryland to leave the Union. The other sees the bloodshed on American streets of crowds fighting with American soldiers. They both join the army as a result of their feelings about this. The thing is, the son was appalled by the strong arming of Maryland to stay in the Union. The father was appalled by the actions in Baltimore. They both join the 1st Maryland. The son joins the Confederate 1st Maryland. The father joins the Union 1st Maryland. The 1st Confederate Maryland was a 1-year regiment, and they saw their first battle at the First Battle of Manassas. They were there since the beginning. The problem is, as they were a 1-year regiment, the men's enlistment ran out after a year. And at this point, the men couldn't exactly return home, as they had all committed double treason. Most Confederates committed a single treason, treason against the nation. These men committed double treason, treason against the nation and the state, which meant they couldn't return home. So the 1st Confederate Maryland Regiment was disbanded. Some men from artillery joined other artillery, some cavalry joined other cavalry, but the infantry were kind of just stuck there. So they were broken apart and then immediately reformed as the 1st Maryland Battalion. So they just shrunk. This unit then later on was combined with some Virginia and North Carolina regiments, which you might normally in the Confederate system, a brigade would be entirely one state. So as this mismatched brigade was being put together, Lee was faced with a dilemma. If he should promote a Virginian to command of the partially Virginian, partially North Carolinian brigade, then you've got the problem of, at this point, the South is suffering from too much Virginia anyways. You have many states complaining about the focus being placed on Virginians and how Virginian commanders seem to be getting all the good commands. They seem to be being promoted quicker, and the papers won't shut the hell up about, oh, how great this and that Virginian commander is. Now, part of the reason for that is the Confederate capital is in Richmond, and a lot of the battles are in Richmond. A lot of the battles are in Virginia. But you have this focus on Virginia, so Lee knows that he really shouldn't promote another Virginian. So he should promote a North Carolinian. Except the problem with that is that North Carolina was the last state to secede. So many of the Virginians are wary towards North Carolinians because they feel that they're less committed to the cause. So you have this partially Virginian, partially North Carolinian brigade, and you need a commander. Well, this way you don't have to choose. What you do is, you move in the 1st Maryland, and now you can promote George Maryland Stewart to command. And now neither the North Carolinians nor the Virginians have to deal with the other being in command. And they were actually pretty fine with the Marylander being in command. They just didn't like each other. And so you now have George Maryland Stewart commanding an entire brigade, but importantly, the 1st Maryland is in it, and they'll meet with the 1st Maryland Union again. I say again because May 23rd, 1862, at the Battle of Front Royal, the 2 Maryland units had faced each other for the first time, and Captain William Goldsborough of the 1st Confederate Maryland captured his brother, Charles Goldsborough, and I'm sure that Charles never heard the end of that. This was supposed to be a quick video, right? Let me just check the time. Yeah, so, I'm going to skip over the story of the 1st Union Maryland and get right into Culp's Hill on the 2nd day. On the 2nd day, the 1st Maryland Confederates are part of an attack to take a portion of Lower Culp's Hill. They advance, taking heavy fire. One of the units they're advancing on is the 1st Maryland Potomac Home Guard, the 1st Maryland of the Union. They advance. The Union troops fire and fire. And the father, with his son's unit at 30 to 40 yards away, picks up his musket, aims. The smoke clears just enough that he can see a few faces. He sees the face he's aiming at is that of his son. He moves his barrel 2 inches to the left, fires, there's smoke, and that is the last time he saw his son. Whether his son was shot by the man next to him, or whether after that volley his son fell back. The man never knew. All he knew was he had not been the man to shoot his own son. But they would never see each other again, his son falling at some point.
Wow, that ending was kind of depressing. Anyway, time for my march to Gettysburg. In the beauty of the lilies, Christ was born across the sea, with a glory in his bosom that transfigures you and me. As he died to make men holy, let us live to make men free, while God is mighty.